For this panel, we have Iñigo from the Social Nest Foundation that will be moderating this panel. But Valerie from Danone Communities, Eva from Fundación Carasso, and last but not least, Ananya from Regenerate Asset Management. Can we please have the warmest applause for them?
Hi, hello. I don't know if you can hear me well? Yeah, okay. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, the three of you, for being here. I would first like to start with a little personal introduction of each of one of you. So maybe Valerie, you can go ahead.
So I'm Valerie Mazon. I am the managing director of Danone Communities. Danone Communities, it's an impact investment fund from Danone, which is investing in businesses, which is either giving access to safe drinking water or to healthy nutrition to low-income population. And I would like to thank you for inviting me today, because the topic is really close to my heart. I have been a managing director of a business in Bangladesh, which is producing fortified yogurts sold at a very affordable price to low-income population. And I can tell you, it is a challenge. So this topic, it's really a challenge.
Yes. Eva, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Iñigo, and thanks for inviting us. I'm Eva Torremocha from Daniel and Nina Carasso Foundation. We are based in France and Spain, and we are financing two axes. One is cities and art. I won't talk about it. And the other one is a sustainable food system. And we are accompanying and financing projects throughout subventions and grants, but also, and more recently, through impact investments. Then we are quite new on the arena, and that's an opportunity for us to tell you what we're doing and to better meet other partners. Thanks.
Thank you, Eva. And Ananya, please.
Thank you, Iñigo, for inviting me today. So I'm Ananya, and I work for a private equity investment fund called Regenerate Asset Management, and we are investing in farmland and farm business in south of Europe as well as northern Europe. And my background, I have been doing investments in the agri-food sector for 8 years now, in venture capital as well, in agtech investments. So yeah, this topic is also extremely close to my heart, and I'm looking forward to the discussion on the challenges and the solutions that we can offer.
Thanks. Thank you, the three of you, for joining. I think it's a very important topic. And before going into the questions that I have for each of one of you, I would like to establish a little bit what are your perspectives on what do equitable and sustainable diets mean, because the food system is extremely complex, so it's maybe nice to have a little bit of a common understanding of what we each think of it, so that the public as well gets a little bit the perspective of experts on the field on what do you think are the main characteristics on the subject.
Well, I think that sustainable diet is a diet which is both positive for the environment and for health. It has been demonstrated that shifting from an animal protein diet to a plant protein diet is very beneficial for health. It reduces the risk of cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. At the same time, it reduces the level of green emissions. So sustainable diet is really both environment and health.
Right.
I would add to what Valerie said, and I agree, 100%. But I would also add the non-visible impact of toxins in our diet, such as plastics and any other kind of endocrine disruptors. I don't know the word in English. Sorry for that. We are not really aware of it, at least in Spain. In other countries, much more than that. And I think being sustainable, it's also being healthy, not only nutritious, in a way of fresh and mature, plenty of vitamins and so on. And I would say that sustainable is also good for the planet, and just to underline what Valerie was saying and perhaps complete a bit, is the planet, the water, transport, and we also add in Carasso Foundation a third dimension of sustainability, that is the social justice. To be sustainable, any diet should be composed by, food that is well-grounded by people in justice, that work in a very correct way and with proper conditions. And we are not only thinking on farmers and cropping teams, but also in people that is working on supermarkets, fulfilling all the supermarket during the night and so on. There are plenty of people, hidden people working in sustainable food chains, and we need to think about them and their conditions, work conditions, to be sustainable on the whole.
Quite a holistic vision.
No, very, very good points from both of you. Don't have too much to add, but I would say that sustainable food is very much linked to sustainable methods of production, and it's also very linked to the nutrition or nutritional quality of the food. So now more and more research is coming out that the soil health translates to your gut health. So if you have better soil microbiome, then the food that is produced is higher in nutrients, the nutrition density is higher, and so your gut is healthier and you are also healthier. So that's sustainable. Like for me, it has to start from the soil and the way it's produced. But at the same time, it should not be exclusive only to people who are wealthy enough to afford that. It should not be expensive. So in a way, we need to redesign the system that becomes the default way of producing food. And that is truly sustainable then, because everybody can have access to that as well.
Thank you for that wide vision that you have shared. We have a little bit of over 30 minutes, and we're going to try to address how can we get closer to a sustainable diet. So I don't think we're going to manage to touch up on everything, but the first question is for you, Valerie. As someone who works on an organization, and please explain a little bit more about Danone communities to the public, as an organization compromised with giving access to sustainable and nutritious diets to a broad population, I wanted to ask you a little bit, what are your views on the main barriers for a population to access a diet like a sufficient and sustainable diet? But also, what are the main differences that you see between the global north and the global south?
Okay, so apart from financing and regulation, which are very important when indeed you want to put into place access to sustainable diet, I think we need to look at what we call the 4A. Do you know the 4A?
The 4A?
No, you don't know.
I don't think I know them.
So the 4A is what is behind access, in fact. So access is about awareness, availability, acceptance, and affordability.
Right.
If you don't answer to those three elements, you will not be able to give access to a sustainable diet. So let's start with awareness. Well, it's very good. You put on the market a sustainable diet, but if nobody, neither the consumer, nor the manufacturers, nor the farmers, understand the benefits of producing or eating a sustainable diet, there will be no impact. So it's very important to put into place educational plan for all the people within the value chain in order for them to understand how important it is to promote sustainable diets. At Danone, for instance, we have a partnership in Spain with the Fundación Trilema. I'm looking at it to make sure I'm not saying the wrong word, which is indeed putting into place in schools training program for the kids to really understand the importance of a healthy diet. In France, we have a program which is called Programme Manna, which is targeting low-income families with kids. And again, within the program, there is a big part on training families about making sure that their kids have access to healthy diet. So let's imagine you are aware, it's good, I'm going to have a sustainable diet. But is it available? That's the second A, availability. Is it available in my country? Can I find it in the shop where I purchase? Well, this one, availability, is really more a problem in global south than in global north, because indeed you have lots of people living in remote areas. So if we take the example of fresh dairy product, we are Danone, so this is something that we know. The issue is very often that there is no cold chain in some countries. So if I take the example of La Laiterie du Berger, which is a family-owned business in Senegal, and they don't have cold chain. And what they do is they collect milk from herders spread out in the bush up to 50 kilometers far away from the factory, and they don't have a place to store the milk in a good condition. So what has done La Laiterie du Berger? They have developed collective chilling center in different areas in the bush, where the farmer can store their milk, keep it cold. Then La Laiterie du Berger is picking up the milk, transforming into fresh dairy products in the factory, but then it has to go to the consumer. And here we are talking about 20,000 small retailers that very often don't have a fridge. So how can we make sure that indeed at the end, this product, that we have managed to make it good quality from the storage in the bush, is going to the consumer in a good quality? La Laiterie du Berger, for instance, is putting into place partnership with a microloan organization or financial institution to help the retailers to purchase a fridge. And therefore, throughout the chain, we ensure that the product is available. So we say awareness, you're aware, the product is available. But is this sustainable diet accepted? I mean, is the sustainable diet anchored into your local eating habits? And this is very important everywhere in the world. If we want people to shift from animal protein diet to plant protein diet, which are much better for the environment and health, well, in the US, for instance, it's extremely difficult because people are used to eat meat. And for years and years, it has been told them that it was good to eat meat.
Yeah.
So to change this is extremely difficult, and you will need to do lots of educational campaigns to do the shift. So you are aware the product is available and the product is accepted, it's a good, and it's within your eating habit. The last one, and very often the most important one, is affordability. So can I buy it? Do I have the purchase power to buy it? And here, there are very different situations, whether you are in Global South or Global North. So if we look in sub-Saharan countries, for instance, a sustainable diet will be a third more expensive than a local diet. In India, a sustainable diet will be between $3 to $5 per person per day, compared to a local diet, which is $1. So it's far much expensive. In the US, on the contrary, it will be far less expensive. It's roughly 14% less expensive, but it's much more expensive than junk food. So in the US, junk food, very cheap, sustainable diet, more expensive. But if we would put in the price of, I would say, normal diet, the true cost of the food, meaning taking into account the cost of the environment, damaging the environment, or damaging health, then normal diet will be much more expensive than local diets. So the 4A, awareness, availability, acceptance, and affordability.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I really like the point that you said about the Laitière du Berger, right? That they build these collective fridges. I think it's very interesting that this model is put forward, and not just in countries where maybe the resources are limited, but to start thinking that by sharing resources, we can do more with them and also consume less energy, less resources. And it shouldn't be a thing of being wealthy or poor that you have to share resources, right? And I also wanted to ask you, now that you share this, for institutions, organizations, and companies that are in the crowd that are working to help shift towards more sustainable and healthier diets, what would you say, as someone who comes from the private sector, from these 4 A's that you mentioned, where are the areas in which maybe they can have the most impact? And what kind of initiatives would you share as a recommendation for them?
Well, I think you shouldn't focus on one. You need to make sure you do everything, unfortunately. The food sector has an instrumental element in managing and tackling climate change while providing sustainable diets. So we need to act. We have no choice. I think we should promote local production for local consumption, what we call farm to fork, which is indeed very beneficial both for health and the environment. We need to promote better agriculture practices, and maybe you will talk about it, less water intensive, preserving biodiversity. But we need also to accept that it is complex, it takes time, This morning at the opening session, Anna from Ashoka was saying it takes 10 years. Yes, it takes time to change behavior. So we need to take it into account as corporates that it will not happen overnight, but we need to act now because we have no choice. So organization, and to be honest, I think most of organizations today are on this journey. They need to really tackle the issue and have a clear roadmap and clear objective throughout the journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Valerie. Ananya, as someone who works on the producing side, first I want you to say a few words of your organization and the activities that you carry out, but I also want to ask you a little bit more on what do you see as the challenges as someone who's working on an organization that's scaling regenerative farming and taking it to the mainstream. What do you identify as some challenges, but also what are the opportunities that you see in the sector that maybe others in the room can also jump on and take advantage of?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because it is challenging and we are, seeing it day to day in our work. But in general, I would say when you focus on very sustainable, like for us, the top category of sustainability is organic plus regenerative. So then there's a lot of work to do where we are focusing on the soil health, on biodiversity, on using less water and like measuring all these KPIs and all these things, right? So in general, in the sector, to do truly transformative work like this, there are several challenges on the production side. And it's not just on the production, I would also mention a bit along the value chain, what are the challenges. But to talk first about the production side, financing and getting the capital to do those kind of changes on the farm is a big challenge today. And this is mainly because the established way of doing farming, which is our conventional, farming that we know about, that's the default system, and that's the system on which the banks and the insurance companies and the regulations and everything is, linked to that. So the moment you want to change those things, those helps disappear. The banks are suddenly like, you want to do something very strange, we don't know it, so it's very risky, I'm not going to give you financing, loans for that. Insurance companies would similarly say, we'll insure your crop only if you do this, but if you do something else, it's on you, I cannot help you, right? So then where does the farmer get the money to do actually implement those changes? And those changes are not huge changes, but it can create working capital gaps, which many farmers cannot afford because it's a very low margin, business production, right? So that's a big challenge. And then actually having the knowledge and access to people who know how to do these implementations on farm is also a big challenge that we are facing, because we as a fund do not have the capital problem because we are bringing the capital, but actually finding people who understand what the principles of regenerative farming is and why we have to take care of the soil and why we need to have cover crops and livestock integrated and eliminate and gradually reduce and eliminate use of pesticides and fertilizers and all these things on the farm and add compost and all. So these are concepts that have not been taught in universities to agronomists. So when I go around Spain, for example, or Portugal and talk to farmers and agronomists, they're like, yeah, we have heard of this, but actually, why would you want to do this? This just increases risk of this and that, just spray whatever you can and, kill all the bugs and the fungus and whatnot. So having people who understand this and who have the mindset to actually learn and implement these changes, that's a big, also, I would say, obstacle to scaling that.
Is it a challenge to find the farmers with the mindset that they want to adopt these practices? Or is it also the lack of experts outside of the farmland that you can bring in?
Both, I would say. I would say, younger farmers, and we are seeing more and more young people interested in farming, they are definitely more open to adopting these practices. But then you still need expertise, right? Because growing cherries is not the same as growing pistachios or olives or, citrus. So you have specialized people who know to do these things, but unfortunately they know to do only that, and they know this is the amount of fertilizer you need to add, this is the calendar of spraying herbicides and pesticides, and the moment you say, hey, but we want to include sheep in the alleys and put cover crops, and they're like, we don't know how to do that, you need to find somebody else. So, there is a challenge on that. And so that's in the production side. And then I think the go-to-market and actually reaching consumers is a big challenge as well, because people know about organic, but regenerative is still fairly new. We don't have certificates yet because it's not a process-based system, it's an outcome-based system. So the outcome can be, how healthier your soil is now, or how much more nutritious your food is now. But these things, they are being built, I would say, how to measure all these things more easily. So consumer awareness needs to be created. But also, the traditional retail sector is also a big bottleneck here, because most retailers, they are in a race to bottom to get market share by reducing prices of their food, and they achieve that by paying less and less to the farmers every time, right? So then if a big retailer says, oh, we'll buy in bulk and pay you only this much, so on the upstream side, the producer necessarily, has to either take that offer and then use conventional methods, which is highly optimized, for production in the short term, because in the long term they will suffer. So you need to have the go-to-market and access points for consumers also in a way that values these kinds of production, right? So that's a big challenge in that as well.
Definitely it is. Thank you, Ananya. I'm going to go then to Eva, because I think it suits very well with what you were saying, Ananya, that finance is very important, but as you were saying, you're providing the finance, and it's not the only thing that you need in order to make this transition. So Eva, I want to ask you a little bit on the role that you do at Carasso, not just helping with finance, but the importance of building human capital from your experience, how it makes a difference in making sure that this transitions take place and last long. And also if you want to share maybe some experiences from projects that you worked on how it made a difference.
Great. I was finishing my previous intervention by people, and I go on with these human beings. For us, essential point of everything we're doing, the transition, having initiatives around sustainable food systems, and we are very aware, and we were before starting working with these people, and we are each time more aware that we are made of dreams, of realities, of failures, of fears and joys and hopes, and that's what we are dealing with when we are indeed dealing with initiatives in food systems. Beside every machine, beside every smart agriculture, beside every drone, you've got a people, someone, a human being that is there, and that we are trying to focus on, because in our point of view, if this transition towards sustainable food system is hard, is long, you don't have that many support as you wish, and then it's a kind of parcours du combattant. I don't know how to say this in English. It's very hard, very long, and you really need to believe it. If you believe it, you're going to look and to seek for partners, and you're going to seek for tools, and you're going to seek for funds, and that's hard. And that's what I think this kind of meeting is really interesting, because we are sharing all together what we are trying to do, each one from our side. This transition is difficult, and if you are not fully convinced you want to do it, you won't get it, at least on the exigent criteria of Carasso. I must say that we are really exigent, but we find these people. We really find these people that is pushing a lot, sometimes too much, and we need to say them, hey, just take a breath and just rest a bit, because you still have a way forward. Finally, I think that funds are important, but we are also trying to be very close to these people. Sometimes we are just listening to them. They are not calling us for funds. They are calling us for having a shoulder, in which just to rest for a bit and to get some motivation, because they feel it's important. And the way we are trying to fulfill these demands is by introducing them in this invisible but existing and very alive ecosystem around food system at an associative level. Companies are perhaps fewer yet, but we've got in Spain plenty, and France, a lot of associations and initiatives at the social ground, very local basis, that are doing great things. And when these people from the company world, I think I talk about words because these two words never talk one to each other. And what we are trying to do is to put them together, at least to hear one each other. we hope they will collaborate together once in the near future, but it's not yet the case. But at least this human support, that knowing they are not alone, is essential to them. And after Carasso meetings, they always thank us to say, okay, we are not alone, that gives us the bit of strength we need to go to the further step and so on. And as an initiative, I was thinking on a very, the exceptional one, and I had 2 or 3 in mind, but the one I had chosen, this local one in Valencia. We were talking with farmers. We were trying to have this affordability of local food here, fresh, with all the criteria. And after how much? 8 years, they managed, because we are only supporting them and finance. They managed to have kind of cooperative of 30 farmers that work together to plan their crop, to work together, keeping the good balance in between the collective and the individual decisions. That's not easy. They sell together, they distribute together to schools, and they are managing to nourish 5,000 scholars every day, only in the Valencia metropole region. Now, we're pushing them to go further and to scale a bit up and to go to the whole Valencia province. And in 2 years, we will push them to have the whole community of Valencia. It's step by step, but I think we now have all the tools, and the tools is the company. You don't manage this scaling up as easily if you are an association that if you are a company. Then that's a call from our colleagues, and we need you. Carasso is pushing the little associative tissue. We are working with them to make them understand that capitalism is not that bad, that companies are not devil, and they need this tool, and these tools are needed also so to make this transition easier, and they're going to be able to go further.
And in this particular case, in this project that you're working with, are you already working with companies in the region in Valencia and these farmers, or looking to work with them so that it can be scaled up?
They managed to work with the company that is organizing all the selling, the buying all the products, and organizing the distribution to all the schools. And they are quite difficult to change, but they managed to have a little one that has decided to work at the very little scale, small scale at the first beginning, and they are growing together. And now in Spain, we've got examples of big companies. I'm going to mention them because I'm happy that they are on board with us. That is Sodexo, Inditex, that are now getting interested on getting this food local supply directly from little farmers. And, it's quite a lot of work, but for now it's working. Then we start in Valencia, now we are going to other territories with other companies, and what Carasso is trying to do is to demonstrate that it is feasible. We can do it.
Thank
it's
you so
not
much,
a dream.
Eva. I think it's very important also the words that Anna mentioned earlier today about systemic change, that these issues are so complex that it's not about who should do it or who can do it. It's so big, and we have such a long way to go that we need everyone at all levels of the value chain. So thank you for sharing that example. I also wanted to ask you a question, which is, I'm an avid defender of moving towards more sustainable and regenerative food systems, but a lot of times, from my friends, from people outside the sector, I am met with skepticism of saying, this is great, but if you move towards more sustainable diets, could we actually feed the world? And this is I think there's not an easy answer to it, but I want to open also the debate a little bit for you to transparently and honestly share your views on whether you think it's an either or there are ways to make this both ideas meet in a common ground.
Maybe I will give some example, but I leave also the floor to the others. But I think that shifting to plant protein diets is A very good one. Why? Because today most of the land is used to feed cattle, in fact. So if we reduce the consumption of meat, you will free up land, and therefore you will be able to grow vegetables, fruits, and so on for feeding a growing population. So for me, this is one thing. The second one is about food loss and food waste, where unfortunately there are lots of food loss and food waste throughout the value chain. And if we manage to decrease it, I mean, it's estimated that it will close the gap by 15% in terms of food. So land, food waste, and the last one, and it's maybe not something that people would like to hear, but it's population, in fact. So why do we say so? It's because population is growing and we don't have land in order to grow a sustainable diet. So we should also put into place program in some countries of managing the number of births in some countries.
Okay. What are your views on the subject, Ananya and Eva? Thank you.
I can go
please.
first. Okay. So, well, there are so many points here. So first of all, I think I like the point of addressing the food loss and food waste part that you mentioned very much, because we already, between food that is lost in the supply chain and that is wasted at the end consumer level in restaurants and in households, is almost 40%. So we are already producing food to feed more people. We are just wasting it. And for me, it's an absurd way of looking at it, because we are wasting all the resources also that go into producing that food, and the unit economics still works to get, cheap food. So, it should not be the case. So we should start by, that's kind of a low-hanging fruit. We should focus on reducing the food loss and food waste. And Valerie's example of this distributed cold storage units for milk is a good example to prevent the food loss that is happening. And I'm from India, and that happens in India as well, because due to lack of, supply chain and cold storage and all, a lot of fresh produce is just lost, right? So that's definitely a case, and so we are not going to not be able to feed the world. Already with the land that we have, we are producing enough to feed way more population than we have now. And the other part for me is, food is also about food security. So it's good that we get grapes from South Africa and blueberries from Chile and all these things, but at the end of the day, a region should be able to be food secure by itself, and that's why the local food production is so important, because we all have seen during COVID what happened when supply chains were disrupted, and when there is a war breaking out, and then countries say we are not exporting any more grains, or all these kinds of issues. So you really don't want to outsource all your food production to other countries and hope that you will be able to import everything when the time comes, because it might be the case that you may not.
Yeah.
So that's why the sustainably producing food should be sustainably producing local food, and that should also mean whatever grows in the region. So if you can grow crops in the Mediterranean climate, and we have been growing that thing for centuries, and feeding the local population before globalization happened, that's what the sustainable food production should look like in that region, and for different parts of the world. So that's why the regenerative part is so important, because it's a reflection of what is adapted to the local climate and how you can best keep producing food in the long term.
Thanks for bringing up that point. I think that it's also, going back to what Valerie mentioned, it's about awareness as well. I think a lot of us don't know where our food is grown, when it grows naturally. Maybe we're eating asparagus in the winter and they come from Peru, but we might think they're grown in Navarra, and we have no idea. So I think it's very important that we bring that also towards the citizens. Eva?
I'm adding, because I agree, of course. I would like to perhaps add there are techniques. As an agronomist, perhaps you are also, we know plenty of techniques that could have, we could improve organic matter in the soils to have better crops. We could be back to this closing the cycle in between farmers and cattle growers or goat growers and so on. We've got plenty of techniques. we know science says, yes, we can feed the world, no problem with feeding the world. We have other problems with cities that are growing, and they are based on the most fertile lands, and they are in competition with food system farmers and so on. We are also, I think there are plenty of things we could do. We are also losing biodiversity. There are crops that are producing better in such climate or another climate, and we are just losing them because of this homogeneity of the market that is needed to feed the whole world in the same way, Then I will just call for diversity in general. And finally, I will also ask for a bit of common sense. And I give just an example that is we've all heard about Almeria model, these greenhouses. I'm from Malaga. It's 150 kilometers from Almeria, and it's at perhaps 400 kilometers from here. It's the desert in Europe, and it's the part of Europe in which we are growing vegetables. Is that logical? No. Then why are we still pushing these models? Perhaps we should apply a more common sense in defining and planning how we are going to feed the world, and I guess it would be better for all of us.
Yeah, no,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have one more question since we have a few more minutes. It's a question that I think we could speak for hours and we would probably not reach the right answer. But you've mentioned a few things before that I think are key. It's how do we make sure that the externalities of our food production are part of the price we pay for food? Of course, I think the greatest burden and someone who should be in this debate would probably be the regulators, right? But do you think that from your role as corporations or investors or foundations, do you think you have a role, or is there a way that organizations like yours could help at least reflect it? Maybe not on the price, but maybe through information. What do you think should be the role for the private sector and the third sector to make sure that these prices and externalities are reflected?
Maybe I can give a part of the answer, because as you said, it's very complex and I don't think anybody has the answer. What is interesting at Danone, what has been done, is that when we give the financial results of the company, we take out the level of CO2 emission. So in fact, the share as evaluated on net, if I can say, CO2 emission. And I think this is a signal to the market, because the issue at the end of the day, big corporations, they are on the market and they have shareholders everywhere in the world. What do they want? They want 15% return on profit. So how can we also, because as you are saying, it's complex, it's not only a corporation, but it's a corporation with all the ecosystem and all the shareholders. So you need to give signal to the financial market that indeed your results are not pure results, and you need to deduct, at least that's what we do with CO2. It's a small part, I'm sure we can go further, but I think this kind of stuff should be fostered and multiplied and used by companies much further than what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So financial market, there is something around the financial market that need to be done in a way of evaluating the performance of a company, taking into account this impact on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
We are not yet here.
Guess what? We are working with people. No, and data. We are trying to have a big data based on research. We've got a think tank. That means we are supporting and funding a think tank that is giving data and all, very, very accurate Calculations, thank you. And that's the basis for us for a strong narrative. And on the other side, we are trying to work with invisible people that are more precarious population, and we are giving them the voice. So to understand what do they need to make better choices as consumers, aware consumers, and we're getting really surprised, and we are getting, I think my biggest lesson since I'm in Carasso, lots of people knows perfectly what they should be eating, and they know that they are getting, sorry for being too direct, toxic, they're eating toxic stuff because they can't afford them, they can't pay for them. But they have very simple and feasible ideas to buy better and to feed themselves better, such as having a conciliar on this food store for telling them this is local, this is fresh for you, that is good for the farmers. You know, they just need to have this information, and that's something that Foundation could, afford. And then, there are very little things that we can do with people, and they are part of, the private sector because they're buying, and that's their strength. It's a very, very pilot project in Carasso. I hope it would go and grow, and we will have it now it's in 2 cities only, and I hope we will have in more cities, so to have the strength we need, because consumers, we need to have them organized so to make a change. But
Ananya,
step by step.
I think we have to wrap it up because we're short on time, but if you want to share something very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. So as investors, of course, we are not going to be able to price the negative externalities, but we can show through data, the way we are doing the farming, that farming can be done without negative externalities, or in fact having a positive impact, right? And so once we have that data that we can show, it's probably a bit easier for changes to be made in the regulatory aspect as well, that, okay, how will the subsidies be paid out now? So, you can help farmers take positive steps on the basis of the better way of farming. So our hope is that in 7 to 8 years' time, when all the changes have been implemented and we actually measure our soil organic matter content and biodiversity and water absorption rate and all these things, and food, the nutritional density of food, etc., that we can actually produce case studies which can hopefully influence, for example, the CAP or other financing mechanisms to accelerate the transition.
I really like the confidence and the trust on walking the right way and then making sure that it will lead to the to results so you can improve. Thank you so much. Thank you, the 3 of you, for this great conversation. Honestly, I learned a lot myself in this 35 minutes, so thank you so much. And then if there are questions from the crowd, I think we still have a few minutes, a couple minutes, or no? Okay. Okay, there are no questions for the crowd. Then if you see them around, you can ask them directly.
Thank you.